The use case I've got for this is a tool built with Copilot to help you with your communications buddy. That uses, like I said, M365 Copilot. We're using Declarative Agent, so it's customized, and then we're using API plugins. So predominantly the primary learning path of this tool is around setting up this Declarative Agent and interacting with API plugins and having a look at how that works as well. And I've also tried to incorporate some security practices in using Enter ID and single sign-on along that pathway. So in case you don't know who I am, sorry, I'm just navigating. In case you don't know who I am, I'm Paul Bullock. I'm an MVP in the development and Copilot space. I also talk a lot. I also run script samples and blog as well. And I do occasional bad jokes and puns and things like that. And I work for Avanade as well. So that's me in a nutshell. So just roughly talk through the architecture of the sample that I'm going to talk you through. And this sample is actually in the ProDev samples gallery as well, which I'll provide a link to later. So if you want to have a look at the code behind this, it's all there. But in a nutshell, we've got a Copilot agent that serves as the user interface for users to ask questions against Copilot and against the agent itself. We've got a component, which is the Azure Web API. So I've written this in .NET and with PMP Core SDK as well. That will then pass through queries from the agent to the Web API to retrieve some data. I've chosen SharePoint, being predominantly a SharePoint guy, really. A SharePoint list. It could be anything. You could use an Azure table or some other storage medium, a database perhaps. But I've used SharePoint list because visually it's easy for me to engineer, and also I get to play with PMP Core SDK a little bit. So it's a little bit of a learning ground for me, just as much as it is to show off a sample as well. I've also set it up as well in a way where you are configured for single sign-on, so that when you are interacting with the agent, you're not prompted to log in or anything like that. So it does take your user's delegated credentials. So that is the permissions of what you've got access to as a user along that pathway through the Web API to retrieve that data from SharePoint and then return that result back to Copilot as well. So I'll talk you a little bit through how that is configured. So I'm going to switch straight to code. I don't know if the awful thing will blow up, but we will see and show you how this is built. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Let me know if I need to zoom in any further than that. But so this is my agent. So I'm in the Copilot experience. I've got my communications buddy here. I've put on some conversation starters. So the communication buddy contains instructions, which I'll talk you through a little bit later, about your corporate style guides and things like that. So you can respond in a specific manner, and the agent can understand what you're trying to achieve with it as well. This will then talk to an API. So if I want to create a message in a message queue, so let me just show you a few example prompts, and then I'll go through the flow, how it goes in. So I've got a new colleague called Warren Tai, who's joined the organization. I want to draft a sample message. What it's actually gone straight ahead and done, I do get this occasionally, is it's gone ahead and generated that message for me, and then I want to communicate to the API to do that. I didn't quite want that, and you see this in Copilot a few times, so it is deterministic. So the result you had yesterday when I tested this doesn't always reflect the result I had today. But nevertheless, you can get it to generate a draft sample of all the communications you want, and then the next step would have been to again create this message to then post to this API. I'll go ahead and click that anyway, since it's jumped ahead for me. So what that will do is it will use my credentials. It will then post that message to the API and then save that content into a SharePoint site. So let me just show you what that looks like as an end result. So I've got this new message. I'm just going to refresh my screen. So if you've got that, so we just had just now through that API plugin, it has this message and it's pasted this piece of text here that it's generated for me. So I'm welcoming that person. I've only got a basic approval workflow. I could have probably done something better with that, but that's cool. And it's posted a few seconds ago from me, so it's used my credentials. I did have the option of choosing, although it jumped ahead, which medium I want to send this through. So you could extend this. So because I'm putting it into a SharePoint site, you could attach a flow, or other mechanism to take that information and then push it out to, say, Outlook, Teams, SharePoint, whatever your credential is. So essentially, you can tailor this going forward and so forth. So just jumping back to Copilot. So I just want to show just a basic retrieval mechanism here. So I want to get the welcome message just to show that it is performing that get operation. As you can see, it's showing all the welcome messages that's come through. So it's reading that list. I've got the item URL. I've got I did choose Markdown content. Doesn't always present well in this manner. So that's just potentially a demo design choice that I need to articulate one day. But as you can see here, it has returned a series of results based on that content. So which is cool. The next part of this is, if I wanted to, I can find that message and then submit. Let me just have a quick look. I suspect it'd be a high number anyway. Okay, so it's not done that, but okay, let me just check something. Minute. Yeah, 37. So okay. So what I want to do is submit message 37 for approval. And then it'll go away, hopefully, and then communicate against that API. And then, as you can see, it's giving you that confirmation dialogue. When you do post to, one thing you'll notice about when you post to actions, it will give that human in the loop. So it will give you that kind of viewpoint, and you can see what data is being sent. I'm only passing an ID to that endpoint anyway, and then you can confirm it. So you always get that kind of human in the loop when you're doing these sort of actions, these API plugins. So that will hopefully go away, and then set that value to submitted. So that will submit through an approval. I'm not going to show too much. As you can see, it's got the results there, and that would have updated that. So I'm just going to jump over to here to refresh that. So showing that, and it's showing submitted. So like I said, I haven't got an approval workflow because it's not the full point of this demo. But as you can see, it's sort of writing information back to SharePoint, and then you can attach a process there onwards. So what I want to do is I want to show you how that works in its entirety. I want to show you that I've got a .NET Web API. So I'm just going to quickly run so this is Postman. If you've not seen this before, Postman's really good at interrogating APIs very quickly. You don't have to code anything. You can just put in a URL, feed in authorization tokens. There's a nice user interface for getting those tokens as well. And then you can get the results back from your API. And as you can see here, I've got a series of results from that API. Here's the one that I posted earlier, the one that would have fed back into Copilot to show that is retrieving it from SharePoint and going through my separate API. So we've got that part. The next set of components are the agent itself. So one thing you do need to do if you're working with API plugins is you need to generate a OpenAPI spec. So what that looks like is it's basically an instruction manual for your API, how you interact with it, what operations, what to expect in terms of the results, in terms of the data. That's how I see it anyway. And you can also at the bottom here as well specify your security information as well. So this will be a setting in Entra, and then you've got your sort of endpoints that it speaks to as well, and also the permissions that you're acting through. And in this case, because I'm working with single sign-on, it's act on your behalf. The next component as part of this is the API plugin. So here we've got a set of functions. This is the bit that defines what operations you want the agent to do. So I've got the sort of get all messages, get message by ID, and then you've got that submit message for approval. And then again, you've got that, with that information, those functions, the security information that will go with it. I'm referencing my Open API. I have a link to the, or a reference to the plugin vault, which I'll show you in a minute, in the Teams developer portal, where you set up that sort of configuration for this. And then we've got some instructions. It's quite a convoluted set of instructions. It's quite long, but essentially it just sort of says, you can set your style, tone, guide. I did something similar with a previous sample with sort of my blog post analyzer. So you can specify what you want. You want to be inclusive. You want some examples. I've also included as well a set of instructions on how to interact with those endpoints in a specific way if I wanted to do that. So having all these components together in the agent itself is part of that. The next component and the final component is the sort of web API. So, I mean, you could interact with APIs that are not built by yourself, or you could build your own. You could use this. This is part of the sample that I submitted to the ProDev samples, where you can source and bring the information through the API. So in this, this is written in .NET, C#. So I specify that I want authentication. I've also got a section of block here that interacts and passes the authentication tokens to PnP Core SDK, so I don't have to have a second step where it has to go and get require that consent again to go and get that information. You can pass through the original one as well. I do have a section down here regarding outputting the Open API specification. But in recent days, I've actually been playing around with dev proxy. So if you do have an API and you don't have the ability to, for the tool to output that specification for you, you can use dev proxy to essentially listen into the API, make some calls, and then it'll help you write out that specification for you, which is a super, super cool. Well, I didn't use in this sample, but I certainly recommend looking at that if you're trying to get that engineering there. So a couple of other things as well. So in interacting with PnP Core SDK, as I said, I've had to use a custom provider here. So essentially what that means is it will get that token, it will then pass it through to PnP Core SDK. So it's basically using my credential, not my credentials, but certainly my token as a user, because I'm delegated, to interact and get that information from SharePoint through PnP Core SDK. You specify scopes, and then you get that access token when you're interacting with that, and then it'll can connect to the site and then retrieve that information. So I don't need to log into it again. So makes that slightly smoother as well. And then we've got this other bit here, which is obviously that connection to SharePoint with PnP Core SDK. As you can see, I'm getting that context with that information. I've got the site as well in the settings. And then we've got the message that send and retrieve. I've got a few of these here where you can sort of create the message. You can create the message, you can update it, you can trigger off approvals and so forth. I hope that's a sort of whirlwind example of how you could interact with APIs through declarative agents. So in that example was a communications buddy. You can have this sort of flow where you are creating a communications and then you're submitting it for approval to a boss, and then that will come back and that'll be useful. So you can integrate that into your sort of workflow if that helps. So one last thing I want to quickly show you. So I'm just on my final wrap-up presentation because I'm at time. Just going to quickly switch here. So as I said, like I said, this is a whirlwind too. So whirlwind tour through the code and exactly how it works. So I've got a blog post around how this is sort of breaking the components down in a bit more detail. So you've got that as a takeaway. This sample and the source code for it is on the Copilot ProDev samples. If you haven't seen it, I'd check it out. It's a PnP repository, and also if you want to look for other samples, well, in the Super sample gallery. And if you want to learn more about how to customize Copilot, again, go to the the Copilot Dev Developer Camp. A few of us have, and it is awesome. It's continually being updated and refreshed, and new content's being added all the time. So I'm really excited about all the new stuff that's coming through. So absolutely check that out. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening. I know it was a bit of a whirlwind, but hopefully you found that useful, and you can take that forward perhaps in your projects.